desperate people trying to get through the door, although the room's already crowded. But I'll keep shining over you all, and with your wings entwining, you better face the fall and keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. Zeros, everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. And keep trying again. I'll keep shining over you all with your wings entwining. You better face the fall. Zero. Everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. Are you okay? I'm not that sure. Forever young, or am I faking? On the tip of my tongue, there's a sarcasm waiting for you. I'm willing to trade my soul for a bit of your charm. There's no way I'll fade into oblivion, 'cause I'll keep shining over you all, and with your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. There's mud on the floor, desperate people trying to get through the door, although the room's already crowded. But I'll keep shining over you all, and with your wings entwining, you better face the fall and keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. Zeros, everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. And keep trying again. I'll keep shining over you all with your wings entwining. You better face the fall. young, or am I faking? On the tip of my tongue, there's a sarcasm waiting for you. I'm willing to trade my soul for a bit of your charm. There's no way I fade into oblivion, 'cause I'll keep shining over you all. And if your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. There's mud on the floor, disparate people trying to get through the door, although the room's already crowded. But I'll keep shining over you all. And if your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. Zeros, everybody's trying to be heroes, when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. And keep trying again. I'll keep shining over you all. With your wings entwining, you better face the fall. Zero, everybody's trying to be heroes, when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. Are you okay? I'm not that sure. Forever young, or am I faking? On the tip of my tongue, there's a
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here as we prepare for the 12th race of the season, season 52 of the RTG Talladega Challenge Series. It's playoff race number 3, race 1 of round 2. It's the precursor race to determining who will be the final 4 to compete for the championship in the season finale. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Zach Freeman, and Zach here tonight could be the opportunity that the 8 remaining drivers are looking for to clinch their way into the Final Four, and that's not an April Fool's joke.
That is not an April Fool's Day joke, Seth. It's good to hear from you. Hello, race fans. As Seth just mentioned, 8 drivers remaining in the playoffs. We eliminated 5 after last week's race. A couple notable names. So anything could happen in this series, as we have seen over the course of the last season and a half. Anytime that there's cars on the tracks and the race conditions are under green flag, you never know what we're going to run into. We've got guys like the likes of Joe Spirito, who is currently sitting 4th in points, who had a pretty rough first opening round of the playoffs. He's not doing too hot. Grant Wesley, another member of last season's Final Four, he comes in 8th, looking to scrape up some points to not get knocked out at the end of next week. So it's really anybody's game at this point, Seth. A lot more racing here to go, and if it continues on like the way that things have been, you never know. We might see 4 more surprise eliminatees at the end of next week's race.
When we started out the playoffs, we had 13 drivers compete for the championship. 5 got eliminated last week. That means that we've now translated those 5 drivers from championship contenders to now drivers that are just going to go out there, try and finish out the season with as many trips to victory lane as they possibly can. A driver that comfortably made his way into these Elite 8 last week, as he's in his first playoff appearance, is Jeff Crivello. Let's see if we can talk with him, as he is our pre-race driver here this evening. Hey, Jeff, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Go ahead, guys.
All right, man. You've made it to the second round. You're eyeing a spot in that Final Four. Is it a try to win here tonight, or are you looking to kind of split between the next 2 races through consistency to point your way in?
I just got to beat the 7 other guys and just hope I avoid the big one.
Hey, Jeff and Zach up here in the booth. Good to talk to you, man. Good to see you in the final 8 as well. Looking to start you at position number 18 on the grid tonight. Like you just mentioned, looking to avoid the big one. Is that tonight's goal? Just make it home clean and green?
That's it. Just kind of stay out of trouble, and hopefully I get people to work with me. I got one guy who will work with me. Hopefully that will be enough.
All right, well, Jeff, best of luck. You've done a great job this season advancing into the playoffs and now advancing into the round of 8. We'll see if you can keep it going here tonight. Best of luck.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the race.
Bob Seminara is going to capture his 5th pole position of the season. He'll start alongside of Chuck McClure. Donnie Garrett and Joe DeSpirito going to make up row 2. So you've got 4 of the Elite 8 starting up in the first 2 rows. Next driver that is not in the playoffs, he was one of the drivers eliminated last week, Bernie Moms, will roll off from 5th alongside of Grant Wesley, who just barely squeaked his way into the Elite 8. I believe we're actually having a reset here. So we will actually have a little bit more opportunity for me able to get the starting grid out as well. Mark Paglia is going to start in row 4 alongside of Dante Ricky, whose winning streak came to an end last week. Jessica Shelton and Bob Dixon, they'll complete the top 10. Dave Melson and Dave Cannon, they'll be in row 6. Jeremy Jeffries, who was another driver eliminated last week, he's going to start 13th alongside of Josh Metallic, who took a Talladega win on Monday night. We'll see if he can go 2 for 2 this week at the high banks of Talladega Superspeedway. Row 8 finds Richard Martin alongside of Wiley Coate, Bobby Farrell, and the driver we just talked with, Jeff Crivello, make up row 9. Row 10 will be 10 Nofsker alongside of Glenn Harris. 21st will be Terry Bombard, Wayne Pribnow alongside of him in 22nd. 23rd, Mike Rogers and Brian Lavelle, who is making his first start of the season. They will be row 12. Those were the drivers that took time. Of the drivers that did not take time, the remainder of the field will look as so. You'll have believe it's Mike Rogers. No, I'm sorry, make that Gary Hurst. He will roll off from 25th. Hank Middleton, who locked himself into this Elite 8 with a victory last season. Wow, that's a long time ago. Last week, he's going to be alongside of him in 26th. Row 14 will find Jason Scheck and John Godfrey. Row 15, Billy Ellisler, another driver that was eliminated last week. Cy Jones alongside of him. The rest of the field going to be Rodney Sullins, Chris Elliott, and Ken Roberts. I think we can safely say, Zach, I needed that reset to make sure I got this starting grid out before we went green.
Hey, if anybody's ever listened to me for more than 30 seconds at a time, they'll know that I stumble over my words a whole lot more than you do per capita there, Seth. So it's really no worries. But I think something that we're going to have to keep an eye on here tonight is the thing that we've really had to keep an eye on all season long. And I know it sounds repetitive for our viewers that watch this week in and week out. You've heard us talk every week about these tremendous point swings that have been taking place all season long, 30 plus car fields, meaning, you know, if you are a person that's in a pretty good points position, you know, say you're a Bob Seminara, a Dante Ricky, who are tied for that number 1 spot coming into playoff round number 2 tonight. If you find yourself out early, man, I'll tell you what, that could really put a big dent in the hopes for your championship contention there, Seth. So I don't think tonight's going to be really much different than what we've seen so far here in season number 52.
And, a lot of people might think, well, for one driver to win their way into the Elite Eight here tonight, that's great for them. The other drivers, they're going to be okay, right? Well, as we saw back in the first round, a lot of emphasis went on performing well in the first playoff race, because who's to say if Grant Wesley and Joe DeSpirito had a bad race one with the hardships they had at the end of the elimination race last week, they could have very well been on the outside looking in here of the Elite Eight drivers. So, I think there's a lot of emphasis. Even if you don't win here tonight, you've got to at least finish up there inside the top 5, top 10. So if you run into an issue next week, your hopes for the Final Four still might be there.
Absolutely. And I think if you're in a position such as a Hank Middleton or a Grant Wesley, you kind of want that insurance for next week, because you come in the two cars that are right there on the bubble here tonight already in a sort of uncomfortable spot. Trouble early could end your season. So here we are, green flag. It looks like Bob Simonera, as is not, too out of the ordinary, will lead the field down to green here. Chuck McClure, he's going to race up alongside, heading off into the first and second corners, but no surprise, leader of the Florida boys right now, Bob Simonera, off to a pretty comfortable lead off of turn number 2.
Saw things really broken up there around mid-pack, a rather staggered start in the middle of the field. I'm being told that Wiley Coate is having some problem with his pedals or his wheel. That actually ended up causing a big gap on the outside line. I believe that the 6 is out of harm's way, but troubles early for the driver of the number 6 Dodge.
Yeah, he's right now cruising behind that number 10 machine of Terry Bombard, right about mid-pack where that field is broken up. He looks to have things pretty under control at this point. I would think if it was a steering malfunction, Seth, that we might be seeing him have some more severe issues under green flag conditions here. So really kind of wondering, maybe a bit of a clutch issue or maybe accelerator issue, because we know they don't use the brakes all too much here at Talladega.
Definitely not, unless the big one's happening in front of you. And then sometimes drivers don't use it if they see a hole to be able to get through, as we've gotten ourselves single file for at least the top 6, now 7, now 8. You got to go all the way back to around the 9th position, where Mark Paglia is mixing it up with Bob Dixon for the 9th spot.
And right now they're side by side off into turn number 3. Dixon appears to have the advantage in that middle line. That middle line so quick, as we've seen all season long. Paglia will slide up in front of the 038 of Dave Melson. Melson going to give him just a little bit of a touch off of turn 4. Not sure if that upset the 28 of Paglia's rear end or not. He did twitch just a little bit, but as it stands right now, Melson has fallen back just slightly, trying to figure out if he wants to ride behind that 28 machine or if he wants to try to get a push from the 8 of Jeffries or the car on the outside line there, David Bones Cannon, because we know he's quick at these Talladega tracks too.
Right now, 2/3, actually no, 3/4 of our 8 championship contenders that remain are currently your top 6, from Bob Simonera back to Donnie Garrett. A thing I'm wondering here too, looking back to last season, 4 of the 5 playoff races were won by playoff contenders. Joe DeSpirito won 3 of them, Grant Wesley won 1 of them. So far this season, the 2 playoff races have been won by playoff contenders. Dante Ricky in race 1, Hank Middleton last week in race 2. But I mentioned the fact that last week we transformed 5 playoff contenders now into drivers that were eliminated or just out there trying to find victory lane. Does that kind of lessen the odds of a playoff contender locking themselves into the Elite 8 here tonight with a victory?
Well, I think it's a very strong possibility that could happen. We'll have to wait and see toward the end of the race, but I don't think it's any real big surprise. We've seen it pretty consistently over season 51 and season 52. The cars that tend to be in the top 5 or 10 in points are typically the ones that we see up toward the front of the field so often. But as you mentioned, with every elimination round, that makes the field behind them even bigger. And these drivers are told during the drivers' meeting, hey, try to be a little bit courteous of your playoff contenders because they are out there running for a championship. That being said, we don't expect you to race any different than you typically would. So we know those guys, just because they're out of the playoffs, that doesn't mean they're out of contention to run for victories. And they'll darn sure make a big effort to try to get it done.
Josh Metallic making a move here as he's now going to crack into the top 10, has Tim Knopfsker in tow. Of course, Metallic got eliminated from the playoffs last week as he was only able to make 1 of the 2 starts in that first round. But as I mentioned, he took a victory here 3 nights ago in the Bare Bones Series at Talladega. So you got to bet that a little bit of confidence there for the 39 as he's looking for his 2nd win on the season here in the Tally Challenge.
Yep, and we know that he can get it done here. He's more than capable. It looked like up front, the 24 of Spirito, he was warping side by side. It looks like he may be blinking out. Spirito and the entirety of that Florida gang, I think, with the exception of, well, no, that's not true, because Mobs had a lot of issues earlier in the season, too. It seems to be sort of a very location-based issue that we've noticed here with the fields. It's something to do with the guys that are down in and or around the Florida area. It seems like, they come out, they're pretty steady for the majority of the race, but the few laps that, they can't keep it together, it's really detrimental to themselves and the rest of the field. Now, as you see, Spirito is going to go ahead and drop low to try and allow the rest of the field to bypass him. But Seth, there's still 60 laps to go this time by. If he can get that worked out, he's got a lot of time left.
But I want to cast your memory back to last week. Remember, Spirito had some internet issues in the midway portion of that race, had to fall back as a result, and got caught up in that big wreck, which put into question for us, was he going to advance into the round of 8? I mean, he has been so consistent in the last 3 seasons, this season included, but it just seems like the timing has been horrible with the connection issues that he has had. We talk about the unpredictability of Talladega. It could be the unpredictability of internet connection that could be taking Joe Spirito out of contention of being a 3-time back-to-back-to-back champion here in the Tally Challenge.
Absolutely, and that would be a major shame, because we know that he has been a serious contender whenever he's out on the track. He's real quick, but as you mentioned, it seems to be these internet issues that are marring his efforts here. And I agree, Seth. I think had it not been for that last week, I think it would have been a totally different story for Joe Spirito. But unfortunately, this is just kind of the boat that he's in at the moment, and hopefully, he can get that back together and everything will be all right towards the end of the race. But you see how much that's affecting him right now. And yes, he's trying to drop to the back to allow the competitors to get by him. But at the same token, you don't want to be that last car in that draft, because as the last car in the draft, Seth, as you know, having run many super speedways yourself, it's kind of tough to keep up there. So you really want to make sure that he can try to maintain as much of that draft as possible.
Absolutely, especially here. I've run a couple of races here in the Tally Challenge. I've been that last car in line, and sometimes you end up having checkups in both lanes, and when you check up, you end up losing the draft. That momentum is lost. Being that last car, you almost have to stay full throttle. As we look back there, you can actually see there's about 2-3 car lengths of a gap from that 24 to the car in front of him, which I believe is the 038 of Rodney Sullen. So Joe Spirito could very well be in trouble losing the draft. Another thing, too, is internet connection can actually play into the draft. If your car disappears, your car is not getting the suck up or the slipstream of the car in front of you, and therefore you're losing time, losing speed. And so that's something else that might play a factor into Joe Spirito maybe not being able to stay latched on to the tail end of this lead group.
Yeah, and right now he is falling farther and farther back. So the farther that he falls back, the harder it's going to be for him to keep up. But assuming they stay green for the time being, hopefully everybody will get back bunched up again, because we've seen in the past, once these guys go from single file to 2 and or 3 wide, that really slows the progress of those lead cars. So we might be able to catch back up. If not, maybe catch a caution and catch back up that way. But right now, up toward the front of the pack, it looks like for about the 7th position, Richard Martin, with a little help from Josh Metallic, Tim Nosker, they're doing pretty well for themselves on that outside line into turn number 3.
They've done a little bit of shuffling up there on that outside line. Dave Melson was leading this group for a little bit, and then he dropped to the bottom. It was then Richard Martin that took the lead here with Metallic and Nosker. Now, Metallic and Nosker, they've been committed to this, making this top side work. Oh, we got a car blowing up! That's Jessica Shelton in the tri-oval. She's going to get it out of the way. I think that the green is still out at this point, but heartbreak there for Shelton as the engine expires right up there inside the top 10.
Yep, and right now the green flag is still out on the racetrack. I believe so long as she can keep that down on the apron, which she has done a very good job of doing to this point, it shouldn't bring out a caution, but that is a big bummer for the Shelton number 94. She was having an excellent night running up toward the front. But Seth, this isn't the first time over the past 3 or 4 weeks now that we've seen engine failures come into play.
If I remember correctly, the last race that we had engine failures at, there were at least 2 engine failures that took place. We've already got 1 here in the first 11 laps. So now all these drivers are probably wondering, oh man, am I next?
Yeah, so hopefully that won't become a trend because, when you say that, oh, what's next? It can sort of seem contagious at times, but for the time being, everybody seems to be looking pretty good. And Seth, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed by that groove on that upper middle line right now. They're just 4 cars strong and they're really holding their own up there. And you see down the backstretch, that lower middle line, they seem to be pretty quick, but that upper middle line, they'll get the advantage heading off into the corner here.
Yeah, we're seeing the classic maneuver that we saw all of last season and towards the first half of this season, where the 2 lanes share that middle groove right between those 2 sets of dotted white lines. And definitely making forward progress is Richard Martin on that top side. When we last looked, he was alongside of, I believe it was Bernie Mobbs at the time, for the 8th position. He's now about to challenge for the 6th position as the 90 does move up to 6th place with Jessica Shelton pulling off track and has officially brought that car back to the garage area. How about the 914 there? The Red Bull Toyota of Gary Hurst. Actually, I'm sorry, that's a Chevy Camaro down there trying to make a move 3 wide on Mike Rogers, but not going to be able to do it just yet. He's actually going to have no friends, and he's going to start to fade back towards the 20th spot.
Yeah, and if you remember, this is Gary Hurst only his 2nd or 3rd week here. So as drivers get a little bit more acclimated, he'll find himself a little bit more help. As you can see, he holds a pretty steady line. He got that far up in the pack, relatively without any issues whatsoever. So he's got the speed in that car. Once he gets a little bit more confidence and his competitors get a little bit more confidence in him as well, I wouldn't be surprised to see him running just as competitively because he's shown that speed. Back up toward the front, it's top 9, top 10, single file all the way around that middle groove. Seth, this is something that we've seen, become sort of a pattern here as of recently. Once these guys can kind of settle down, they don't race as hard 2 or 3 wide. They get single file and they tend to stay that way for quite a while.
Well, you say that, and now they're going to go and leave Bob Seminara out to dry. Chuck McClure made the move. Grant Wesley says, all right, I'll go with you, and everybody followed in tow. So Bob Seminara, who led the first 13 laps of this race, now he's going to drift back outside of the top 5. Chuck McClure is going to take a turn out in front.
Yep, and we know McClure more than capable of winning. He's got himself a win on the season. So right now, those top 6 cars, they're going to try to check out a bit from those cars behind them that are side by side. You see the 11 car, he's going to get a little bit of advantage. He'll get out in front of those cars that are racing side by side right behind him. But as it stands right now, those top 6 cars, they don't look to be too racy or to be trying their luck, but you better watch out because, Bob Seminara fell back, but he's got a lot of help. He's got a couple real quick race cars pushing him from behind.
Right now, the fan club for a caution is growing and growing. We have a total of 25 drivers up in this lead group, but drivers like Terry Bombard, playoff contender Jeff Crivello, Cy Jones, Chris Elliott, Jason Scheck, and Joe DeSpirito have all lost the lead pack. They are hoping for a yellow flag to come out to catch them all back up. And you talked about the fact of the big number of car counts we've had here this season, Zach, and the point swings we've had. We should probably update everybody what the points, the reformatted points for the second round look like coming into this race. They are still close. Bob Seminara and Dante Ricky, they currently are the co-points leaders, 4 points over a tie for second between Donnie Garrett and Joe DeSpirito. Now, technically, those two would be sharing the cutoff line. Behind them, minus 2 points, is our race leader, Chuck McClure. 6 points back in 6th place is Jeff Crivello. Then a total of 8 points back is Hank Middleton, who went to victory lane last week, and Grant Wesley, who just squeaked his way into the final 8. He's a total of 10 points back behind that cut line coming into this race. So, the max points back, 10 points, that can be lost or gained here today easily.
Absolutely. And it's like we talked about at the top of the broadcast. I know, race fans watching, listening at home, you're probably tired of hearing us talk point swings, but it really has been as crucial a theme this season as Seth and I have been making it out to be, because we've seen some really fast competitive cars not even make the playoffs, get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, just because these fields have been so big and drivers have been doing such a good job of keeping it racy. And, when that happens, things happen out there on the racetrack, which can be detrimental to what you are trying to achieve, especially points wise. But right now, big single file set. It looks like we just got a couple cars on the outside line. We will come across the line this time by to complete lap number 18, just about a lap or two away from when we're going to see our first round of green flag pit stops.
Absolutely. Josh Metallic is the car that's left out to dry there. Now he's going to pick up Jeremy Jeffries. The outside line was trying to move, but I think they got held up by the 11 of Mike Rogers. That just broke the entire outside line up and has now translated to single file all the way back around the 20th position is where you'd have to find our first side-by-side. And I don't think we're really going to see these drivers race it up as much right now. As you said, we're on the crest of green flag pit stop, so everybody's going to be vying for that inside line, the best possible entry onto pit road, as Chuck McClure is actually going to start the pit stops now. And he's got about 6, 7, 8, 9 drivers coming down with him.
Oh,
no! Going to make contact with McClure.
McClure facing the wrong way at the entry of pit road, exactly what he did not need for his points pursuit here tonight. He also spun out onto the grass, so not only did he get turned around facing the wrong way, lose a lot of time, we're going to have to keep an eye and see if he's going to get a penalty for going out on the grass there as well.
Past the commitment line on pit road, so no caution comes out to save him either. Grant Wesley's going to get himself a bonus point for a lap led. He, Dante, Ricky, Donnie Garrett, now the top 3. Expecting them to probably come down pit road this time. Looks like the 88 is definitely coming down. And yep, the top 3 and just about everybody else on back is coming down this time. Big group of cars.
Oh, man, I thought the 038 of Melson might get into the rear end of somebody, but he made it through. It looks like the 92 Farrell slid out onto the grass as well as somebody else, but everybody else makes it in without incident, so still no yellow flags this time by Grant Wesley. He's going to just about lead them down pit road. He's going to pull into his stall. He's going to take on gas. It looks like the crew is going to go ahead and change the right side tires as well, so Seth, if this works out in the ideal sort of situation, in pit road first, out of pit road first, assuming there's no mistakes anyway.
Exactly. That other car that was having an issue getting onto pit road that you were seeing was the 914 of Gary Hurst, and we're now looking at potentially where the race lead would cycle around. Of course, that second group will be leaving pit road at this time, so Bob Seminara hoping that this group behind him, consisting of Bob Dixon, last week's winner Hank Middleton, Mark Paglia, and I believe that is the 6 of Wiley Cope back there as well, that they're going to be able to be the top 5 when everything cycles around, but doesn't look like they're going to be up in the race lead when all this cycles around unless they've got the momentum, because they're only right now around maybe the 11th, 12th position as things run.
Well, they're definitely at speed in comparison to the cars just coming out on the racetrack. And comparatively speaking, Grant Wesley heading off into turn number 3 was only at 184 miles an hour. So you can bet those cars being led by Bob Seminara on the outside line were probably going about 10 miles per hour faster than those cars were. So I think what's going to happen here, Seth, is you've got your first 2 cars being Dante Ricky, Grant Wesley, and then you've got about 2 or 3 car lengths back to Dave Melson and Jeremy Jeffries, then another 4 or 5 car lengths back to Donnie Garrett. By the time that this second group catches up to this first group, not only are they going to have the draft of that first group, but a lot more cars, so I wouldn't be surprised to see these guys immediately too wide once they get caught back up.
Top 5 right now, single file, side by side for 6th, going on about maybe 8 car lengths behind this top 5 single file line. And Dante Ricky, we talked about how he had that streak of 3 wins in a row. Obviously, he's getting it done on the racetrack, but he has been getting it done on pit road as well. That third trip to victory lane that he had, he was second place, coming down pit road on a green flag pit stop, came out the leader. It's deja vu all over again. He followed Grant Wesley to pit road. He led them off of pit lane and inherits the race lead here, third of the way through this race.
Absolutely. And Dante has been super fast. I believe it's in the last 5 races, he has not finished any worse than second place. So, he's looking to capitalize on that. We talked to him a couple weeks ago after his 3rd win on the season and win number 2. Oh man, there was almost some bumper grab between the 88 and 84 there, but they kept it straight. But as I was starting to say, we heard Dante say 2 weeks ago, that 3rd win on the season and 3rd consecutive, that was a statement win. He wanted his competitors to know that he was serious about running for this championship. And once again, a third of the way through tonight's race, Dante Ricky proving that still to be true.
Obviously, still a long ways to go in this race, but we're going to update where the playoff contenders are running in just a moment, as here comes Bob Seminara. That 6th place on back has caught the top 5. They're carrying the momentum to the top side. Seminara has Bernie Mobbs in tow, along with Dixon and Middleton, and I mean, how about Middleton there in the 2, coming off that victory last week, advancing into the round of 8? I mean, he's got a lot of momentum on his side. You know that he would love to now have the alleviation of the pressure going into next week, knowing that he's going to be advancing into the Final Four, as would the other 7 playoff contenders.
Well, they're all more than capable of doing it, and if you can get a win to give yourself that insurance and not have to worry about the outcome of next week's race, if you win tonight, Seth, you're almost automatic. Well, I say almost, but if you win tonight, you're guaranteed a spot into that Final Four. So not only does that alleviate any sort of concern about, having to perform next week, but you can now think 2 weeks ahead. And while you're still going to come out here and race as absolutely hard as you can next week, if something bad were to happen, it's fine. Brush it off. You're still going to try to run for a championship anyway.
Well, obviously, we've still got a long ways to go in this race. When they hit the line this next time by, we will have 42 laps still to go here at Talladega, but a lot of drivers, even this early in the second round of the playoffs, may have dug themselves into a hole. Dante Ricky right now the leader. Grant Wesley cycles around to second. Bob Seminara currently holds down the 5th position with Hank Middleton in 8th. Then you've got Donnie Garrett in 10th place. So those 5 drivers right now running very well, looking to have good points day. The 3 drivers in trouble after everything that happened past the green flag pit stops. Chuck McClure, after that spin out, now finds himself back in 22nd. Jeff Crivello, who lost the draft early, is back in 24th. And Joe DeSpirito right now in 25th. So those 3 drivers, if something drastically doesn't happen here in the second half of this race, I hesitate to say it, but we could very well be talking about these 3 drivers heading to next week in almost must-win situations to advance into the final round.
Hypothetically speaking, yes. That being said, race fans, we still got about 52 more laps remaining. It'll be 41 or 41 laps remaining here at the line. So never say never. We've seen stranger turns of events throughout the course of races. I do not want to mention the one last week, but you know what one I'm talking about, where if something happens, yellow flag comes out and the field is bunched up once again. And especially when it comes to those 3 drivers that you just mentioned, that all 3 of them are a serious threat. If you put them back up in the draft again, they will find their way back up toward the front.
And so far, with running the entirety of this race from this point, from the start, clean and green, we're still going to be destined for these drivers to have to hit pit road at least 2 more times if that's under green flag conditions. So far, we've seen, for the most part, the formation onto pit road be safe and drivers be able to make it on without much contact, but there's no telling that the second and third green flag pit stops, we may not see an incident prior to the entrance of pit road bringing out a yellow flag.
It's very plausible, Seth. So I'm trying to think back over the course of the last season and a half that we've been doing this. I remember there was one race that went green to checkered before I started. Have you, Seth, as the statistician of our broadcast, week in and week out, do we have on file any other race that we've gone green to checkers since that race in season number 51?
So, to my knowledge, from season 51 to now, there have been 2 races that have gone green flag from start to finish. The first one was the season opener of season 51, as a matter of fact, and the second one was either race 3 or 4. I want to say it was race 4, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So, to my knowledge, 2 races have gone completely clean and green for the full 66 laps.
Okay, so that's definitely something to keep in mind, race fans. This thing not quite over yet. So right now it looks like Dante Ricky, he's going to work into the inside of the lap machine. That's going to be the number 7 of Cy Jones, who has lost the draft, going a lap down now. Another guy not to count out. We've seen Cy have some excellent runs. They're then going to be working their way up onto Wayne Pribnow in the 00 machine off of turn number 4. Pribnow going to work his way to the high side of the racetrack. Very kindly let the leaders bypass low into the tri-oval. It's all Dante Ricky being pushed by Grant Wesley, though. Right now, Seth, it doesn't look like anybody looking to get too racy as they work toward the next round of green flag stops, which should happen probably about another 10 laps from now.
Yeah, not right at the moment. Everything remains single file train with Dante Ricky, the engineer. I'm kind of wondering why there aren't some drivers further back that are trying to make some moves here to kind of test the waters. especially with the fact you got guys back there like Bob Seminara. He's got Bernie Mobbs in tow. I'm certain if the 712 jumped up to the top side, he'd probably have a couple of drivers that would jump up there with him. But then again, as you mentioned, I mean, we're still 9-10 laps away from that round of green flag pit stops, and obviously these drivers here, they want to preserve their race car for the end of this event. But at the same time, I've been noticing at least the top four down the back straightaway, they're almost pushing each other, shoving each other down the back straightaway. You got to be aware of chain bumping. I mean, we had that heart-stopping moment where there was contact between the two race leaders that almost was catastrophic. So you got to be aware of that.
Absolutely. So I think, another big reason that I'm surprised that they're as single file as they are, Seth, is because that is the biggest group of race cars on the racetrack. As the leaders came across the line that time by, the next group, which is only consistent of 4 cars, being the 39 of Metallic, the 08 of Glenn Harris, the 26 of Elliser, and the 143 of Bob Dixon. That's just 4 cars. So, I mean, usually we're used to seeing these guys be a little racier than what they are right now. And I'm surprised they're not really going for it, because they have the ability to try to race each other and make moves and not have to worry about these cars behind them. Also, I apologize. That was the 043 of Brian Lovell.
So we are still a ways away from, what's going
Yellow
on
flag
here?
is out.
Okay, so caution is out. I was noticing them fan out.
Tim
Wasn't
Novsker.
certain.
Tim Novsker currently sitting on the inside of turn number 4.
This another engine failure?
No, he is running, so it must be something contact related. However, he is off pace, well off pace. It doesn't look like the car is too terribly damaged, if at all. So I have to take a look back and see what happened. I believe at this time looks to be only a single car incident involving the 088.
See if we can find out what exactly happened. This was towards the tail end of that lead group, I do believe. Oh, no, actually, it was in a second pack. And it looks like maybe some checkup taking place between the 10 of Terry Bombard, the 92 of Bobby Farrell, and that led to the 088 getting involved in this as well.
And Tim Novsker has just had a lot of bad luck over the course of the last season. Now, remember, he started late into season number 51, got himself a couple wins, but wasn't able to work his way into the playoffs. This season had a win taken away earlier in the season, which would have locked him into the playoffs. Consequently, ended up missing the playoffs altogether for season number 52. And once again, that 088 is torn up. Window net is down. They have pulled that car behind the wall. It looks like, unfortunately, Novsker going to be done for the day.
And after the last 2 weeks, I think Tim Novsker might be one of the drivers lobbying for Talladega to be a 3-corner racetrack. I think he wouldn't mind if they eliminate turn 3 altogether. That's where he's had trouble in the last 2 weeks here. And there you just saw the contact there. He was 3rd car in a chain bumping line and then just snapped around. Unfortunately, Ken Roberts got into the back of him, and then nowhere for the 11 of Mike Rogers to be able to go.
I'll tell you what, as unfortunate as that incident was, there was a couple pretty good saves. I think that wreck probably could have been a lot worse than what it was, but a lot of really good heads-up driving there kept more cars from being involved. Right now, all the leaders working their way down onto pit road. We know this time by, we will be about halfway home, so still going to have to make at least one more pit stop before the end of this race, but that's not going to stop him from taking on a full load of fuel at this point.
And while I'm certain that Tim Novsker was not smiling, he put smiles on about maybe half the field's faces. With this caution coming out, they now have a chance to catch back up here to the lead group, notably Jeff Crivello, Chuck McClure, and Joe DeSpirito, who all managed to stay on the lead lap. This breathes new life into their opportunity to try and lock themselves into the Final Four.
Hey, Seth, by chance, did you see what position the 24 was when he came onto pit road? Because coming off of pit road right now, currently, scored 5th, beat the 84 car off of pit road. So if this all cycles around with nobody else in front of the 24 pitting, Joe DeSpirito went from the outhouse to the penthouse in a quick hurry there.
Yeah, I'm not certain how he was able to gain all those spots because he was 25th when the caution flag came out, running nearly 30 seconds behind the race leader, which at the time was Dante Ricky. So I don't know if this was a fuel-only stop that was able to get him out there, or possibly I'm wondering if Spirito might have come down pit road just prior to that yellow flag coming out, might have stayed on the lead lap and was able to stay out when the rest of the drivers came down.
That could very well be. And remember, they were only about halfway through that fuel run. So it is also conceivable that he may have only taken a can of fuel in that 24 car and no tires, which, as you know, Seth, that can be, assuming they had, probably about 10 gallons of fuel left in the car at that point. That could very well have been, maybe 7 or 8 pit stop, comparatively speaking, to everybody else's 12 or 13.
Absolutely. And you see Jeff Crivello now coming down pit road. He stayed out, led a lap, so a bonus point there for one of our playoff contenders. He'll lead down Terry Bombard, Mike Rogers, Jason Scheck, a couple of drivers that decided to stay out. And there is the 24 of Spirito. So actually, I'm wondering if Spirito might have actually stayed out the extra lap there and is coming down under the second lap of caution.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know for sure that the 24 came off of pit road. I watched him come off of pit road ahead of that 84 car. So not quite sure, as you mentioned, Seth, what may or may not have happened unless, he had some sort of miscommunication with his crew as to what service should be done on that race car.
Maybe he missed his pit stall as well. Because with being as far back as he was outside the top 20, a lot of drivers in that vicinity of the field have the struggles of trying to get into their pit stall when the race leaders are leaving theirs. And of course, Spirito qualified up towards the front of the field in 4th place. So he would have had a long trip down pit road before getting into his stall. Might have been some possible near contact with another driver that also qualified up in that vicinity.
Okay, so in the course of 2 laps, Spirito went from 25th to 5th, back to 23rd. So he's got his work cut out for him again. Back up toward the front of the field, though, there's a couple guys that are feeling pretty good right now because not only do they have fresh rubber, they also have fresh fuel in the car as well. And Dante Ricky, I believe, once Wayne Pribnow either takes the wave around or comes in this time by, Ricky gonna find himself back on the point. I don't know, Seth, at this point, over the last season and a half, we've talked so much about that 24 car, but as of the last month and a half now, the real story's been that 84 car.
It really has. There's no doubt about that. Dante Ricky has come alive. Now, he was definitely a contender last season as well, winning 2 of the regular season races, advancing into the playoffs. But this season, it's like he's hit a whole new level. We went back and checked, and only one other driver previous to Dante Ricky's 3 wins in a row had actually been able to pull off that feat as well, and that was Joe Spirito last season. Wayne Pribnow is going to come down pit road. I thought he might take the wave around because Pribnow actually pitted under that last green flag run, but he will not take the wave around. He will come down pit road, and Gary Hurst, Cy Jones, they are the 2 lucky dog machines. We'll see them go around for the field to then double up when we get the 1 to green.
So Cy Jones, Gary Hurst, they're going to be much happier. They'll be back up with the pack. A couple cars that kind of got left out, and I wouldn't be surprised if that may have had something to do with that incident coming into pit road under that first round of green flag stops. They may have been a little bit behind them and had to whoa up for those cars that were sitting sideways and out in the grass, and that could very easily, something that small could lead you to losing that lead draft. And Seth, as we've talked about, man, once you get outside, once you lose that lead draft and those cars get into a giant group, there is no catching back up. You are at the mercy of the next yellow flag.
Absolutely. So the way they'll stack up here for this restart, Dante Ricky and Grant Wesley, the front row, Bob Seminara, the pole sitter, alongside of Dave Melson in row 2, Jeremy Jeffries and Donnie Garrett in row 3, Bernie Mobbs, Richard Martin, Hank Middleton, and Bob Dixon are going to complete the top 10. The rest of your playoff contenders, Chuck McClure will restart in 17th, Joe Spirito in 21st, and Jeff Crivello will restart last car on the lead lap in the 26th position. I believe he came back down pit road here at the 1 to green, topped off the fuel tank, so we'll have to keep an eye on that if we manage to go into another long green flag run.
Absolutely. Across the line, once we go back green flag racing, there will be 31 laps remaining. So we know that somebody who does a really good job at managing their fuel, they can make it about 20 laps. But if you're reckless or running up toward the front, it's usually right around 19. So that's going to leave another 12 to 13 laps toward the end of the race after they have to make that final pit stop. So still a lot of racing to be done. If we make it all the way to green flag stops, as we've seen the last couple weeks, it'll definitely split this pack up. But if not, I think we're in for a pretty exciting final 30 laps here, Seth.
This race is almost following the template of last week as well, where we had that long green flag run for about the first half of the race. That caution came out, and then what happened not too long after? The huge one off of turn 4. So these drivers now all bunched up have to be aware of that. Hopefully they'll give space, and I think we're going to start to see the 3-wide formations come back here after we were about 10 to 15 laps of single file racing just moments ago.
Green flag in the flagger's hand. Dante Ricky quick up through the gearbox, but Grant Wesley may have just been a little bit quicker through the gearbox. They are at a dead heat into turn number 1, and that 90 car mobs scary side-to-side warp once again, as we've been talking about. It seems to be that Florida gang.
Might have had a little bit of wheel spin back there with the 17 of Chuck McClure. His car darted out towards the apron for a brief moment. He gathered it back up, tucked back in line in front of, I believe that was Lavelle in the 043, as Topside's going to get the advantage heading into 3. Dave Melson with a big push to Grant Wesley, but Dante Ricky says not so fast. He leads the inside line back alongside the 88.
Only 3 cars on that inside line before you get back to the number 2 car of Middleton, and a bigger gap before you get back to the 28 of Paglia. But those 3 or 4 cars on that inside line, they know how that bump draft works, and they know how to get around here quick. So if anybody can make that inside work, it's going to be them. Right now, Grant Wesley still with the slight advantage on that outside line, but you see as they get about halfway through that corner, that 84 sticks a nose out in front, and off of turn number 2, the 84 is going to be at the advantage about the halfway point of the backstretch.
Close call there off turn 2 as Richard Martin had a quick side-to-side alongside of Hank Middleton. Fortunately, did not warp down into the 2 machine. And a lot of these drivers in the middle line, they were itching. They were dancing to try and go 3 wide. It's Dave Cannon who's going to bite. He's going to lead that 3 wide top side with Chuck McClure, Joe DeSpirito, and Jason Scheck back around the 12th position.
Don't sleep on those 4 drivers. Another few drivers there that are extremely experienced super speedway racers, and if they're going to lead a top line, those would be another 4 guys really good to do it. This time by Dante Ricky did lead that lap, but as we go off into turn number 1, it's going to be 2 by 2 for the first 2 rows. Cannon now working on the outside of row number 3, trying to get the advantage over the 77 of Garrett.
Talked about how close the point standings between the remaining 8 is coming into the second round of the playoffs. 5 of our playoff contenders have led laps here tonight, so they've been able to get that bonus point. So the points still remain awfully close amongst those 8 drivers, as each one leading a lap kind of cancels out the bonus point that the other playoff contender had.
And something that we've seen a lot over the course of this season, once those cars got on that outside of that middle line's going to drop back real quick. Jeremy Jeffries, I'm kind of surprised to see him dart to that middle line because he has absolutely no help behind him. He's only got one way to go, and that's backwards.
McClure thought about ducking down there behind him, but Grant Wesley now tucks up to the back bumper of the 8, so McClure jumps back up to the top side. Dave Cannon a little squirrely there in that 3rd lane.
Right now, Donnie Garrett is doing a masterful job of leading that extreme outside line. Middleton and Paglia, they're now going to look to the middle line, leaving Dante Ricky and Bob Seminara all by themselves off into turn 3.
And then Paglia is going to jump back to the bottom, so Hank Middleton getting faked out. He's going to drop back to Jeffries, who now will move to the inside, so no help for last week's winner. Garrett and Cannon on the top side, they've been the mainstays up there. They haven't swapped lanes, and they're continuing to make forward progress against the middle line, trying to make the same progress against the inside line, but right now it's Bob Seminara and Dante Ricky out in front of all the mayhem from 3rd place on back.
I'll tell you what, if you're Donnie Garrett and Dave Cannon right now, you're loving the fact that that bottom and middle lane are racing each other as hard as they are now. Donnie Garrett wisely going to slide down to that middle line, but nobody going to go with him. He thinks about blocking Cannon for just a second, but then wisely reconsiders. Joe DeSpirito now dives down to that middle line. It's now just Cannon and the car behind him on the outside being McClure, Paglia, Garrett, and DeSpirito now leading that middle line off of 4.
Middle line best formed as it's been in the last 3 laps. We'll see if Paglia can make forward progress now with Garrett, DeSpirito, Jeffries, and Wesley. That's some fast cars in that middle line. Right now, the 3-wide situation is for the 5th position. Paglia crowds Rodney Sullins down almost below the yellow line through the tri-oval. They're now 3 wide for 6th.
Man, I'll tell you what, this is getting intense, and these guys aren't getting any farther away from each other. Right now, Dante Ricky out to the sizable advantage. 5-car breakaway up front before you get to Sullins and Garrett battling for that 6th position. And now it looks like that middle line may be getting just a little bit more traction. The Spirito doing a masterful job of pushing Garrett down off into turn number 3.
Ryan Lavelle in the 043, little space there between himself and Rodney Sullins. He'll now close that up as look at Donnie Garrett and Joe DeSpirito by themselves actually making some progress there. They gained about half a car length alone through 3 and 4.
And if there's any 2 drivers that can do it, we know that it is them, and they are really good at doing so. Joe DeSpirito, as we predicted, has worked himself from what was the 23rd restarting position up to about the 17th position, I misspoke. I apologize. The 8th position at the moment. Sorry, my scoring hadn't updated. So that's 17 or 15 positions there that he has gained over the course of the last 4 or 5 laps. So just goes to prove, don't ever count that 24 car out.
Battle is on for the lead. Bob Seminara will look to the inside of Dante Ricky. It's Chevy's on the bottom, Ford's on the top side for the first 2 rows.
Trouble toward the back. A lot of cars making contact. It looked like the 814 may have come across the 88. Grant Wesley almost lost it down on the apron. As you see, he loses quite a few positions, but everybody able to maintain it in what could have ended up being a real big wreck there in the middle of 3 and 4.
Credit to everybody being able to keep it straight. The 914 of Gary Hurst actually had to go up into the wall to avoid spinning out. Green flag stays out as we continue to race our way towards potentially the final pit stop of the day. It's still side by side for the race lead. Seminara and Ricky not giving an inch to each other down the back straightaway.
Not giving an inch to each other, but Hank Middleton and Mark Paglia also aren't giving a single inch to those guys' rear bumpers. Right now, it's the Paglia push paying off as it's now 2 cars the advantage over that middle line, but Bob Seminara going to try to work his way back up alongside the inside of that 28 car off of 4. Not going to be able to do so. Donnie Garrett now going to clear Seminara into the tri-oval.
Mark Paglia last season finished 2nd in 3 races. Did not find victory lane. You got to think he's hungry here tonight to pick up a victory after what's been a bit of a winless drought for him. Here comes Donnie Garrett, though, down to the inside. We talk with him week after week because of his consistency. He says, I'm going to top 5 and top 10 him to death, but you know that in the back of his mind, he wants to head into next week knowing he's competing for that championship. He wants to get that car to victory lane.
Oh, you know how hungry he is. He is on one heck of a winless streak right now, but he's still maintaining his position up there in points like the professional driver that he is. Right now, though, I'm kind of surprised that he ducked to that inside line because he was running pretty comfortably in that 3rd position with the 24 car pushing him. Now that he ducked to that inside, I'm sure he thought that they could make some ground down there. He's now fallen back to the 6th position as the 17 of McClure is going to get by him into 1 and 2.
Talked about how Paglia had 3 runner-up finishes last season. Garrett has 4 this season as Dave Cannon now going to pull by him for the 4th spot. Chuck McClure there in 5th. And as I said, when that caution came out, it was a godsend for the 24 and the 17. Look what they have done with it. They're both up in the top 5 now here, closing in on 20 laps to go.
Don't look now. David Cannon and Chuck McClure have decided they are going to make a bid at that top 3. Cannon now to the inside of DeSpirito off of turn number 4. He drifts up just a little bit before taking it back down to the yellow line on the racetrack. But once again, we see this inside line get up to about the 3rd car, and they're just kind of stuck there. Right now, Cannon is side by side with the DeSpirito machine. Question is, does he have enough momentum to get up alongside the 28 of Paglia?
Dave Cannon finished 2nd place in race 5, half a car length short to the eventual winner, Chuck McClure. These 2 are now working together to try and push that Sam's Club Dodge to the front.
So here they are down the back straightaway. Dante Ricky still with a comfortable advantage over Paglia and DeSpirito. Jeremy Jeffries now side by side with the 3 of David Cannon. Behind Cannon is still the 17 and 77 trying to give help in the form of a draft or a bump draft. But as we've seen a couple times already, the bottom line just not quite working. So we see the middle line taking the advantage over something that we're not it's not it's not uncommon for us to see that middle line with the advantage. And right now, that bottom line, they just can't get it together and get the right bumps working. We've seen it before when they can get about 3 cars doing a solid bump draft all the way around the racetrack, but they just haven't figured it out yet.
Now, these drivers went back green on lap 35, so based on the calculations we have, we're going to be seeing them have to make that green flag pit stop, should they end up making a pit stop under green flag conditions, because there's still a ways before we get to that point, in about the next 7 to 9 laps. But these drivers are still all close together. They're still side by side, several rows deep from about 6th back to the outer portions of the top 25. There's still the possibility that the big one could strike, so we have to wait and see if that final pit stop will take place under green flag conditions or possibly under the yellow.
A little bit of a shout out right now. Jason Scheck having an excellent day in that Neil Bonnet look-alike number 5 Mom and Pop's Goodwrench Chevrolet. Currently running in that 5th position behind the number 8 of Jeremy Jeffries. Scheck, one of those drivers that when we see him out here, we see him be fast and competitive, but he tends to run into a lot of that bad luck that we see a lot of other guys run into. Right now, looking really stout as he now moves to the inside, as does the 24 of Joe DeSpirito in the Detroit Oval.
So Joe DeSpirito going to try and lead the inside line, gets alongside of Mark Paglia for the 2nd position. Both Jason Scheck and Ken Roberts there in that 55 having great performances, as Scheck started this race from 27th. Roberts started this race shotgun on the field.
So look at these guys. They are having a really good run at it. And finally, Joe DeSpirito is the car. We saw him drop to the rear, take into the pit stops, come out 5th place, go back to the rear again, and since he restarted in that 23rd spot, he is now battling for the lead into turn number 3 here on lap number 49. So those internet issues that were plaguing him earlier, it looks like they have cleared up quite nicely here as we come around the racetrack to try to work on a lap number 50.
Spirito has not led a lap yet today. Can he edge the 84 at the start-finish line and get his first lap led?
Not really sure what happened with the Paglia machine there, but right about the start-finish line, he came down and door-checked the number 5 of Jason Scheck. I thought we were going to have a massive pileup at the start-finish line.
I was looking around trying to find a spinning race car there with that reaction, but indeed, DeSpirito did lead that lap. So now 6 of our 8 playoff contenders have led a lap here tonight.
Jeremy Jeffries all over the back end of that Paglia machine through 3 and 4, but Joe DeSpirito, he has now figured out how to make that bottom line work with the help of Jason Scheck and Dave Cannon on that inside. This time across the line, it looks like it is going to be, again, DeSpirito with the advantage. So right now, that bottom line, they've really worked themselves out, and we've got pretty equal number of cars on both the inside and the outside of the racetrack right now.
I believe that the 7 of Cy Jones has just hit pit road, so we are now entering into the vicinity when these drivers are going to have to start thinking about making green flag pit stops, and we've got them side by side from the front all the way to the back. That's going to be interesting to kind of be traffic control with them double wide trying to dive onto pit lane.
Going off into turn number 3, we had what was the equivalent of a 195 mile per hour pace lap. And if you didn't know anybody, you would think we were just watching these cars pace at an accelerated speed on our cameras here, but you were seeing everything just perfectly, ladies and gentlemen, side by side by side by side, all the way through the field. So Seth, I think if my calculations are correct, we're only about 2 or 3 laps away from seeing our next round of green flag pit stops.
Lap 54 is about the furthest these drivers could go on what they've got in the tank. I think we may see some drivers dive to pit road as soon as now. I'm starting to see the chat bar light up, so expect to see some drivers hitting pit road this time by.
And this is really going to be interesting because we've got 2 distinct lines. Unless that outside line is definitively staying out on the racetrack, there could be just a little bit of congestion on a pit road. But I see 1-2 cars toward the rear of the draft. Bernie Mobb's going to be one of them. They peel off, but now there's a car on the inside wall. He has spun off the nose of another at the entrance of pit road, but we are still under clean and green racing conditions into 1 and 2.
That was Bob Dixon that had that spin at pit road entry, and now I think we're going to start to see some of these race leaders come down pit road, notably the 84 of Dante Ricky, because he's been out in front for a good portion of this green flag run. Obviously, he would be using up the most fuel. He is probably an absolute must to come to pit road this time. He saw Richard Martin move from high to low. We're going to see, I don't know, maybe the whole field come down pit road this time. This is going to be interesting.
Is Dante Ricky going to be able to get onto pit road, though? He is stuck on that outside line. No, he has to stay out on the racetrack this time. Joe DeSpirito leads that pack into pit road, and right now, Seth, it looks like everybody made it in perfect. No incident.
Beautiful formation, everybody minding each other's braking zones. No incident for the first pack. Now it's up to the second pack to see if they're going to be able to make it on safely. Some of the notable playoff contenders in this group, Dante Ricky, Grant Wesley, they are going to have to make sure they don't make any mistakes, because drivers like Joe DeSpirito, Chuck McClure, and Donnie Garrett, Bob Seminara, at least for the moment, they were good on pit road entry. A lot could change from there to pit road exit, but we'll follow that up once the pit stop cycle around.
Keeping an eye on it right now. Your leaders are in between turns number 3 and 4, coming off of turn number 4. Dante Ricky is looking low. The leaders do come on to the pits road. Man, Jeremy Jeffries. We do have trouble.
He collects John Godfrey
into the 7-Eleven machine, who then gets into the Glenn Harris machine, but we are still under green. That's going to break up that pack in a big way.
The contact was not made until they got to the commitment line, so no yellow flag will wave. We still remain under the green flag. I believe most of the playoff contenders coming to pit road were ahead of that incident, so I don't think that the wreck at the pit road entrance is going to affect them, but we'll have to wait and see as Joe DeSpirito, Mark Paglia, and Jason Scheck, they've gotten out and lined up. We'll have to see where they cycle when all's said and done.
Man, they really need to boogie right now because they're just coming off of pit road. The leaders, or the cars that pitted the first time by, are coming out of the tri-oval. So those cars going to have a sizable advantage over the ones coming off of pit road right now. You see the 24 of DeSpirito and the 28 of Paglia along with the 5 of Jason Scheck. Man, they've got a lot of speed on those cars that are just hitting the back straightaway right now. So this is going to shake things up quite a bit.
They were going 195 through the corner. Race leader cycle around right now would be Josh Metallic. He's just now hitting 180 miles per hour. So these guys going to be at a huge disadvantage to the 24, who along with Paglia and Scheck powers to the outside, and that Exalta Chevrolet is going to be the race leader when we come back to the start-finish line.
Without a doubt, into the tri-oval right now. There's nothing Josh Metallic can do but watch those cars drive by himself and Dante Ricky, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, Seth, because they're going to tuck right in line there, and now that they're up to speed, they're not going to lose a whole lot of time to the cars coming up behind them.
Jeremy Jeffries tucking in line there behind the lap machine of Gary Hurst, trying to see if they can get an inside line formed. Brian Lavelle down there as well in the 043. Doesn't look like they're going to quite be able to pick up the progress they wanted to, as Hurst, I believe, does have some damage. We saw him pancake the outside wall with that near caution back on lap 40. It did not bring out a yellow, however, and as things cycle around, it will be just DeSpirito the leader, Paglia second, Scheck in third, Seminara is now going to move up to fourth, Dante Ricky, who was battling with Joe DeSpirito for the race lead when they all came in, he's now going to cycle back to fifth with Grant Wesley in sixth.
So right now, as the way it stands, Josh Metallic and Dante Ricky, they tried to make a shot at making an outside line work, but Bob Seminara said, no, sirs, I will not go with you, and stuck with that middle line. That shuffled Dante Ricky back to the fifth spot, and it looks like Josh Metallic now falling to just about 3 or 4 cars before the end of the line of cars here. So that cost the 39 quite a bit, but Dante Ricky now being able to gather his stuff back up, really take a look at what's going on. This time across the line, there will be only 9 laps to go as now the leaders work themselves off turn 4.
I believe we'll see the 8 of Jeremy Jeffries coming down pit road. He was black flagged for speeding. He indeed is now coming down to serve that penalty. I'm almost wondering if there might have been an issue for Chuck McClure as well. he is now scored 23rd on the grid, still on the lead lap. And David Cannon, I don't know if he was involved in that contact with Wiley Coate and John Godfrey with that incident pit road entry, but he's actually made the hard left-hand turn and brought that number 3 back to the garage area.
And that's an unfortunate thing there for that 003 car who was having an excellent run there today. I didn't see the 17 get into trouble, but it's been no secret the 17 machine has been plagued with issues on pit road as far as speeding has been concerned so far this season. So I have to keep an eye on that, see if he can get himself back into a line and hopefully keep himself from falling a lap down. But right now, the lead pack looking a lot like it did through the first portion of this race, Seth.
Yeah, this is looking like the exact same thing we saw in the first half. Side by side, 3 wide at the initial start. Then after the cycle green flag pit stops were over, single file formation. We've done that again when the caution brought everybody back together back at the midway portion of this race. The single file train going from race leader Joe Spirito back to the 39 of Josh Metallic, who right now runs in, I believe it's the 11th position.
So I'm really curious to see exactly how the finish of this race is going to play out, because we know Joe Spirito, he's had to overcome a little bit of adversity in the last 2 or 3 weeks to keep himself in playoff contention, now leading the field over the 28 of Paglia and the 5 of Scheck. Your next car battling for playoff points sits in 4th and 5th position, as well as the 6th position. That's the 712 of Seminara, the 84 of Dante Ricky, and the 88 of Grant Wesley. So as this winds down, Seth, you've got a couple guys up front in the form of Paglia and Scheck that would love to go up there and steal a victory, but immediately behind them, you've got 3 cars right in a row that want to get up there and steal that win away from that 24 car, because that's their insurance into that Final Four at the end of the season.
5 playoff contenders and 6 X Factors, I like to call them. Drivers that may have made some deals with the playoff drivers to help push them to a victory to lock themselves in the Final Four. But as soon as they put the helmet on, every driver wants to be the first one to that checkered flag. And you talk about Joe Spirito. During the regular season, the 24 finished outside the top 15 only twice. In the first round of the playoffs, back-to-back 29th place finishes. So if there's a driver that is trying to get his playoffs back on track, look no further than the race leader.
Absolutely. And after the issues that he had earlier in the night, falling all the way to the back of the field, that leading the pack, sitting in that shotgun position, he doesn't want to give that up at all. He had to work all night long to get himself back up there. But if there's anybody that can do it, it's that number 24 car, with as much success as he's had on this super speedway over the last couple seasons.
Dante Ricky came into this race tied for the playoff points lead with Bob Seminara. Not only did he lead a lap here tonight, he will have led the most laps here this evening. No driver is going to be able to top the 26 laps he has led tonight, so that's another bonus point that will go in the direction of the 84. But we've now entered into the point, Zach, that we kind of dubbed the point of no return. If they come around to complete lap 62, next flag will end the race, whether it be the white flag to finish this thing to the start-finish line or the caution flag to finish this thing under pacing.
And you know what? I think guys are starting to take recognition of that as Bob Seminara, he now darts down to the low side on the inside of the number 5 of Jason Scheck, but now he's going to slide back up behind the number 5 car, maybe a little bit of a psych out there through the corners.
Yeah, testing the water, seeing if he jumped out of line, if Dante Ricky or Grant Wesley would go with him. And I think maybe also Mark Paglia helped Jason Scheck when he stayed up there on the top side. It helped the 5 keep the 712 in his rearview mirror. A little bit of traffic to deal with here. Kent Roberts, Wiley Coate, and Wayne Cribb now. They'll try and make quick work of them and then go back to work on seeing who's going to formulate that second line.
As they come off of turn number 2 right now, it looks like the leaders will have those lap machines clear. They will stay on the high side of the track to allow the cars racing. But right now, Dante Ricky looks to the inside of the 712 of Seminara. He's got help from the 88 of Wesley, the 43 of Martin, and Dave Melson. A little bit of contact. The 5 car up into the wall, but will save it.
Jason Scheck with a tremendous save. As I didn't expect that Dante Ricky was going to be alongside of him going into turn 3 either. Got a heck of a run, got past the 712 and then to the inside of the 5. The contact ensued, and credit to Scheck for keeping that thing straight. So far, we're going to be keeping it green, as now it's going to be Paglia and Ricky, a couple of Mustangs rather, to see if they can gang up against the Camaro of Joe DeSpirito.
And right now, Joe DeSpirito, that has to be a pretty lonely feeling, knowing that you've got the 28 and the 84 behind you, because I don't think either one of those drivers... Oh no, the 84 sideways on the backstretch! The 88 sideways as well. They both spin to the inside of the racetrack. Currently, still no yellow. The 84 back up onto the track.
That's two playoff contenders. The spin took place below the yellow line. So to your point, no caution coming out here. We're going to come back to 2 laps to go. Paglia now has no friends on the top side, as now the Dodge of Richard Martin will move into second place. He's going to bring Dave Melson along with him. Here comes Metallic up to the top side, 3 wide.
2 laps remaining. Josh Metallic trying to make that extreme outside work around the 28 car, but they've got no help up there. They're going to start falling back once again. At the front of the pack, it is DeSpirito off of turn number 2. The big question now, what does Richard Martin do? You know, Richard Martin wants to get up there and get a victory. The 38 of Melson as well. He wants to get it. The 92 of Farrell. These guys are banging bumpers off into turn 3.
The 92 of Farrell is off the lead lap, so if someone goes up to the top, will he be willing to go with him? Right now, he's kind of holding up the 712 of Seminara, who wants to go. Now he's going to jump high, comes back down low in front of Donnie Garrett in the 77.
Yeah, and I think the 712's trying to give a message to that 92. Hey, man, you're kind of in a lot of people's way right now, but Farrell not budging off into turn number 1. It is the final lap. DeSpirito still on point through 1 and 2.
We talk about DeSpirito, Seminara, and Bernie Mobbs as part of the Florida gang. Let's not forget Richard Martin's a part of that group as well. Would he be willing to help push his teammate to a victory to lock DeSpirito into the final 4? Turns 3 and 4, will he decide to go for it himself? Here comes Melson. He's going to go to the top side with help from Bob Seminara.
Melson threw a big block on the 712 car, which almost ended up in disaster, but coming off of turn number 4, Joe DeSpirito with about a bumper between himself and the 43 of Martin. Martin doesn't look to be making any moves to try for the victory across the line. Joe DeSpirito gonna find his way back to victory lane here in race number 3 of the playoffs here in season number 52.
After a horrible round 1, Joe DeSpirito is going to be the first driver to etch his name into the Final 4, as he will make the attempt as a back-to-back-to-back champion here in the Tally Challenge. And Joe DeSpirito, a little bit of stats here, he was the winner of playoff race number 3 last season, so a back-to-back winner of the first race of round 2 in the playoff system.
Down the back straightaway there, you saw the DeSpirito machine put a donut on the side of that 43. Hey, man, thanks for that help there on the final lap and not leaving me hanging. This is going to be DeSpirito's 3rd win of season number 52. So how quickly things change after back-to-back 29th place finishes. As you mentioned, Seth, he's back in winner's circle once again.
And as we saw that side by side there for the 3rd position, Josh Metallic gave it a heck of a run on the top side. If he'd had maybe one more lap, he might have had something for Joe DeSpirito, as he'll cross the line in 3rd place by 2 100ths over Donnie Garrett.
But I'll tell you what, who's not feeling really great right now, that's going to be the Grant Wesley machine. He's going to bring it home in 13th place after we saw that contact between himself and the 84 of Dante Ricky. Ricky unofficially scored in the 22nd position as he was contending for the lead there with just a couple laps remaining.
It's going to be really close for the drivers down around that cut line, as we're going to look here at the finishing results. Not only did those two drivers, Wesley and Dante Ricky, have issues in the closing stages, but Chuck McClure, the pit road woes continued for him. He finishes 17th. Jeff Crivello finished on the lead lap, but down in 20th. And Hank Middleton, who went to victory lane last week to lock himself into this round, finishes in 21st. So there's 3 drivers that are going to be heading into next week in a comfortable position. Obviously, DeSpirito locked in. Donnie Garrett and Bob Seminara are going to be gaining some good points here tonight, but those other 5, they may be the ones to duke it out for who's going to get that fourth and final spot into the Final Four next week.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how it happens because, as you mentioned, that's 3 of our top 8 that, are sitting in 20th position or worse. So that's definitely a shakeup of things when only, 3 of our top 8 for the playoffs here finished in the top 10. Not something that we're used to seeing so much.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be talking momentarily with our top 3 finishers. Usually we end up talking, it seems, with playoff contenders for the podium, but only one of the playoff contenders will be one of our interview drivers here tonight. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can talk with our third place finisher here. Josh Metallic, after being eliminated from the playoffs last week, brings it home with a solid third place here tonight.
Out and I was just hanging on to the edge of the draft. I couldn't keep with it.
Hey, Josh, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you.
Getting a little bit of an insider information of what happened there on that final lap. Man, I was watching that Air Force Ford on that top side on the final lap. I thought maybe, just maybe, you guys had the momentum. What little more did you need off of turn 4 to make sure you were going to be alongside that 24 to maybe snipe a victory here?
I needed the finish line to be at the entry to 1. No, it was kind of crazy because I was looking at them like, man, these lap cars everywhere, and I realized they're all racing for position, and got hooked up with the 6 and Wiley, my fellow admin, and pushed me up close to the front, making for top 3. I was hanging at the back of that group, not by choice, but I had to wait till people started to make some moves, and luckily made enough to get a good finish out of it.
Now, I got to ask you, we documented how the Bare Bones Racing League had a Talladega race here on Monday, which you took the checkered flag there. So how much confidence did it give you coming into tonight's race to see if maybe you could pick up your second Talladega win in four days?
Yeah, I joked on the pace lap that I was going to go 2 for 2, not thinking I'd get anywhere close to it. It's tough to win these. You've run it. There's so many fast cars, and there's so much luck involved. I lost the draft after the first round green flag pit stops. I had to check up for some cars that were a little too slow. They're getting it was just a mess coming into the pits, that many cars, and dropped to almost 40 miles an hour, and then lost the lead pack. So I definitely needed that yellow to get back into it. But yeah, confidence never lacked for that. But it's the competition that knocks you down, not the self-confidence part of it. But first and a third, 2 races in a row, I'll take that anytime.
Hey, Josh, Zach up here in the booth. Congratulations on your third place finish in our little pre-race powwow that we usually do weekly. I did tell you that I would talk to you later, so I knew that you were going to finish in the top 3. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Good premonition there. That was impressive, Zach.
Hey, no problem, man. Hey, so look, I saw you trying to make a lot of moves out there on the racetrack tonight, but with the amount of single file racing that we saw, we had quite a bit of side by side and 3 wide as well. But I feel like about half of the race was dedicated to single file, and it looked like every time that you would try to start a run to the high or inside line of the racetrack, the line just wouldn't go anywhere. Tell people at home that don't understand how frustrating that can be. Can you just explain and describe that to them?
It's very frustrating. There's such a fine line on making the line work. If someone scrubs a little too much of their tires exiting the turn, it causes a checkup because you can't quite push yet right out of the turn. And if someone's not running the same line you are, they're kind of darting back and forth. You can't just come up and slam the back of their car. And when you got some of these guys pushing, bump draft in the middle lane that are lined up like a finely tuned machine, and you're kind of, darting your car back and forth, trying to get everything lined up, you're scrubbing off just enough speed to not get anywhere. So, we would do that, and then I'd get frustrated. I'd jump down in the middle, pass some cars, jump back up, or jump back down. Someone jumps in front of you, and if they're on different lines, it's just real tough. You have to kind of run the line that they run and hold it solid. Any darting around or shakiness with the wheel, and it just slows the whole thing. So that's how competitive it is. It's not bumping. It's got to be bumping at, it's got to be perfect, or you're not going anywhere.
All right, so you opened up season number 52 with a victory, locking yourself into the playoffs. You were looking pretty comfortable to make it to round number 2 until you had to miss last week's race, which unfortunately knocked you out completely. So, how much does it change your perspective coming into these races? Is it less pressure because you don't have to worry about watching the points the entire time, or is it just as much for you because you still want to go out and win every one of these races?
Well, other drivers will have other answers, but for me, it's the same. Points are nice, championships are nice, but I'm out to run for the best finish, and we'll figure out the points afterwards. So, you saw 2 weeks ago I was run up front, and I wasn't worried about points then. I was just worried about getting the win. And tonight here too, the goal was to steal a win from the chase guys that were left. I figure if you beat them all, you don't have to worry about which one you're helping. So we were trying. But yeah, if you go out there and just try to get your best finish every week, you don't have to worry about points or brackets or any of that. Just do what you can and see how it shakes out afterwards.
All right, Josh, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. We appreciate your time. Sponsors, thank you, shout outs. What do you got for us tonight?
Yeah, I do want to say thanks to Wiley, the other admin here on Thursdays. He held the fort down nicely last week. I got to watch the race last Friday night on vacation. So it was a good race, good finish. Glad to see Hank get a win. That was cool. Thanks to the owners, Terry, Bones, Prime, the drivers that show up. This is one of our lower car counts, and it was like 33, 34. So when you're in the low 30s and it's like, man, where is everybody? That's a good sign for a good league. And thanks to you guys. I love the broadcasts, love watching them. The drivers love them. It's a big hit with everybody. So it's been a lot of fun. We'll try to get a win the last 2 weeks here, but yeah, I'll shut up and let you guys move on to second place.
That's Josh Metallic, third place here tonight at Talladega Superspeedway. Strong run for you, Josh. Congratulations. And we look forward to seeing what you do here in the final 2 races of the season. Going to be fun to watch you as an X Factor.
Appreciate it, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
And let's now see if we can get our runner-up finisher here tonight, Richard Martin. Hey, Richard, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
10-4.
Man, I was watching you on that final lap, and it was kind of looking like you were between a rock and a hard place. You wanted to help, it looked like push that 24 to the victory, but looking back through the statistics, June of last year was the last time you went to victory lane back in season 50. So how much were you wanting to make the move to try and take this victory?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for broadcasting. I wanted to pull out in the worst way, but I've been racing a long time with Joe, and I just decided to stay there. I figured if I would have pulled up anyway, maybe, I would have lost what I had. So I just decided to stay behind Joe and take second because my luck this season has been very bad, would be like an understatement. It's been kind of bad.
I was just going to talk about the luck you've had this season. It just seems like a lot of times you're just in the wrong place, wrong time, no fault of your own. That's the horror sometimes of Talladega. But, I mean, going down the home stretch here now with a finish like this, how does this give you confidence for the final 2 races of the year?
Anytime you can come close to winning or be in the top 5, it always boosts your confidence. So I'm looking forward to the last few races. Maybe see if we can pull one out along the way here.
Demar, Zach up in the booth. Good to talk to you, brother. Hey, man, congratulations on a good, strong second place finish here tonight. So I already asked Josh, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you as well. You don't have so much of the playoff shenanigans that you have to worry about. You only have to go out there, try to get the job done, try to get yourself into victory lane. Can you tell us, does that change your perspective of how you approach these races for the final few weeks of the season here?
Well, thanks for broadcasting, Zach. I'm just going to go out there and just try to do the best I can, stay out of trouble, maybe have good pits. My pits haven't been the best lately, but they were really awesome tonight. And just going to try and put myself up front and maybe, get into the top 5 and go from there and see if we can, eke one out.
And if you can get yourself into those top 5 positions, avoid the bad luck that you've run into so many times over the last season and a half now. Do you feel that you are definitely a contender to get up there and win? Because I don't think there's any question in our mind that you can get the job done.
I always feel like I can be in contender, Zach. To be honest with you, in these, Daytona or Talladega, I always feel like if I can, luck has a lot to do with it. But if I can get myself up there, like I said, in the last, get in 5th or 6th spot or something like that, with 7 or 8 laps to go. I like to make my move when there's 7 or 8 laps to go in case a caution comes out. Because if a caution comes out, and then that move you were thinking about is not going to work no matter what.
All right, man. We'll go out there, get yourself one of those victories here before the end of season number 52. We'd be happy to talk to you in Victory Lane. Sponsors, shout outs, thank yous. What do you got for us?
Oh, I'd like to thank you guys, Flatout Racing. I'd like to thank Josh for doing Thursday nights. He always does a great, tremendous job. And Dante and Dave and Wiley and all the other admins. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. And congratulations, Joe. Well done.
That's Richard Martin, his best finish of the season, 2nd place here tonight at Talladega Super Speedway. Congrats on a good run there, Martin. And maybe next week, if it's you in the 24, maybe he'll help repay the favor, push you to victory lane.
It would be nice. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And let's now talk to that driver of the 24 car, Joe Spirito. Hey, Joe, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you guys. How you doing?
Man, it's been a long time since we've gotten to talk with you. Round 1 is a thing of the past. You are now locked into the Final Four in your attempt to be a 3-time back-to-back-to-back champion here in the Tally Challenge. How good does it feel to get the monkey off your back after what's been, let's be quite honest, an abysmal start to the playoffs?
It feels pretty good. Man, that was the craziest race I've ever been in. I started the race with network issues. I was warping all over the track. Went to the back. Barely hung on to the lead lap. Jason Scheck helped me out. We rode together. Caution came out. I went in under caution, changed some settings in my game. I even went to desktop at one point and was like, I think I'm going to quit here, And then I came back out and I didn't warp anymore. And yeah, I just made my way to the front and it all worked out. It was crazy.
So, Joe, as we mentioned, this has been an entirely polar opposite season in terms of the playoffs as it was last year. At this point last year, you had won the first 3 playoff races. But now that you've got that victory, you're locked into the Final Four. What's the goal for next week? And then also, how, as you said, it's kind of been unpredictable for you, not only in this race, but for this season. What is your mindset heading into that Final Four? Because as things are looking right now, you may have some new contenders for the championship that you didn't have last season.
Yeah, everything stays the same, rinse, repeat, try to get the pole, try to lead as many laps as possible and try to win the race. I got a couple other guys that I need to help too. And hopefully we can get in the top 4 together and we'll see how it goes. But I've been lucky with race 3 in the playoffs. I think the last 3 seasons, I think I've won race 3, something with that race 3 in the playoffs has been good for me, but we'll see how it goes, man. I'm glad I got the win and I'm locked in now.
Joe, good to talk to you again. Win number 3 on season number 52. You and Dante, the only guys with multiple victories throughout the season, both at 3. So I got to put you on the spot and I got to ask you, after a pair of 29th place finishes, how do you shake that monkey off your back? And even we heard it in your voice just a moment ago when you were talking about the connection issues that you were having earlier in the race. How do you put that into the back of your mind when you're out there on the racetrack and say, man, I just need to get the job done?
It was hard because, man, the last 2 weeks finishing 29 twice, like you said there, I really lost a lot of confidence. I didn't think I had what it took to even, race up front anymore. I don't know. I didn't even want to race anymore. I was so pissed with my connection and computer and everything that's going on. And, I raced with you on Monday night and I finished, I think 3rd or 4th or 5th, whatever it was, top 5. And, my connection was okay, but that kind of gave me a little picked me up, and I kind of felt good about myself again. And luckily tonight worked out where it stopped at the end of the race. But yeah, I was what a crazy change of emotions from the beginning of the race to the end. Unbelievable.
Okay, so I have to ask you now, you've punched your ticket into that Final Four. So you're in that championship race. You don't have so much to worry about next week. You don't have to worry about points. You just have to worry about putting it together for 2 weeks from now. So what's the game plan for next week? Do you come out here, try to win that race as well, and try to size up the rest of your competition? Or do you just kind of lay back and say, let me see who my competition is going to be going into this Final Four for the last week of the season?
Yeah, it's going to be a mix of everything, just checking out what's going on amongst the competitors, trying to help my guys out, and just trying to actually stabilize this connection issue that I've got going on so I don't have any problems in the finals. It's just going to be a bunch of things that I'll be working on. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes, and hopefully it works out. I think I had a bad race 4 last year, so we'll see what the difference is this year. But another crazy race tonight. Great racing up front.
And ladies and gentlemen, breaking news, this just in. Joe DeSpirito, who did compete in the Monday night's race, finished 6th behind the 006. Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry. Joe, thank you. Shout out sponsors. What do you got for us tonight?
Oh, man. Yeah, that was good racing with you on Monday, man. It was cool. But shout outs, I got APW Racing, FTMF, Mobs Motors. I got to thank my sponsor on the car this season, TravisLutherArt.com. I want to thank everybody at home watching, everybody at work, all my family watching, and I got to thank FRN, RTG, Josh running a great league on Thursdays, and I appreciate everybody, man. Thanks, guys.
That's Joe DeSpirito. He's the first driver to punch his ticket into the Final Four for the championship this season with a victory here tonight, his 3rd of the season at Talladega Superspeedway. Congratulations, Joe. We look forward to seeing the strategy that you play out next week in your preparation for that season finale.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Seth, for all your help.
Yeah, Monday night was great. Joe got a 6th. Zach got a 5th. I found the catch fence. There is a catch fence over in turn 4, nonetheless. We ended up going back and looking at the replay there of the incident with Dante Ricky and Mark Paglia, as well as Grant Wesley. It looked like it was bumper grab. Just to update there on Dante Ricky, he finished 22nd because he took responsibility for the incident. While coming down pit road to serve the penalty, he was pegged for speeding, received a black flag, and thusly finished a lap down, which dropped him a couple more spots in the standings. And because of that, Zach, heading into next week, Dante Ricky, who was a guy that not only locked himself into the playoffs at the end of the regular season, but then locked himself into round 2 with a victory in that second round, the first race of the first round, I should say, locked himself into the Elite 8. He's now the cut line driver.
He is now the cut line driver, and ironically enough, no car with the size of the fields that we've had so far this season, aside from the 24 of DeSpirito, will be safe from elimination come next week's race, as there are only 27 points separating second place from the 8th place of Hank Middleton. So it's definitely going to keep things spicy, Seth. We're not going to know, with the exception of DeSpirito, who's going to be in that Final Four until that checkered flag falls next week.
Those drivers below the cut line right now: Chuck McClure, Grant Wesley, Jeff Crivello, and Hank Middleton. Of course, Middleton getting that victory last week to lock himself into this round. I would certainly say that if you are a playoff contender driver, you want to at least have a good run in the first race, so that way you can try and build off of that in the second race, or if you run into trouble, you've already stacked up those points in the first race to maybe keep you in the top 4. So for those 4 drivers below the cut line here, are they in a must-win situation mentally? Are they in a self-preservation mental state? I mean, what is the strategy for these guys going into next week, since really this week we didn't have the dreaded big one?
You know, as ironic as it is that Dante Ricky is the car on the cut line, and the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th place cars are the ones that are farthest behind in points. If you look at it, I would say the only 3 that could pretty comfortably come out and cruise next week, assuming they don't find any trouble out on the racetrack, are the top 3 in points right now. I don't think if you're 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th that you can really, ensure yourself that you are safe until you see how next week's race plays out. So I think that there's going to be a lot at stake, and there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to, kind of recognize, man, I'm in a tough position right now. I don't know if it's a must win, but we know that a win will cure all in punching your ticket into that Final Four. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely is. Last week, we didn't even bother doing any human calculations. We waited until the official word was in. I have the feeling the same thing's going to be said next week to find out who's going to get those final 3 positions. We know the one driver that's moving on, and that's the defending champion, Joe Spirito. Should be a good one next week. We whittled the field down from 8 to 4 to find out who are going to be those contenders to battle for the championship. Joe Spirito looking for 3 in a row. Who will his competitors be? Those questions will be answered when Zach and I bring you coverage of race number 13 next week, the final elimination race here of season 52 of the Talladega Challenge. Zach, a crazy one here tonight, maybe a little calmer than we expected with a race with so much on the line, but appreciate you joining me in the booth for this one.
Yeah, I think it was. I think you're right. I think it was a little bit calmer than we anticipated that it would be. However, it was still an excellent race. Thank you, Seth. Everybody back at Flatout Racing Network, all the owners, admins, drivers, everybody over at Rolling Thunder Gaming, and of course, you at home, the race fans watching out in YouTube land. It's been a pleasure. We will talk to you next week. Thanks, Seth.
1 spot's taken, 3 spots remain. They'll be decided next week when race number 13 of season 52 of the RTG Tally Challenge goes green at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For Zach Fremont, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening as you've been watching another broadcast tonight courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.